Shema Israel. I hope you enjoy this next study. My name's Dee. This is my wife, Millie.
So if you like what you see, subscribe and hit the notification bell. And if you wish to reach out to us, you can email us at devotedtoyah@gmail.com.
There's more. There's more. Let's continue. Okay. Exodus chapter 32. Oh, somebody want to say something? Bryce?
Yes, I saw a cross reference to in Ezekiel 16 and 30. I don't know if that was on there.
I don't think we
pretty
have
much
that.
saying it says, "How weak-willed is your heart," declares Yahuwah, while you do all these things, the acts of a shameless prostitute. So I don't know if that kind of correlates. And then Jeremiah 9:3, they do all these things, or they bend their tongues like their bows, lies instead of truth prevail in the land, for they proceed from evil to evil, and they do not take me into account.
Yeah. A lot of these Ezekiel and Jeremiah are prophets who are speaking to God's people who are brought up under the law. They are brought up, educated on the Torah, and they're not obeying it anymore. And Israel is considered like God's wife. And so you can't be called a prostitute. You can't be called a prostitute or any of these things if you weren't in a relationship. You're not an adulteress if you weren't in marriage relationship, anyway. So those are good scriptures you're bringing up. Absolutely. The prophets get into this a lot. All right, but let's get back into these passages here disproving the once saved, always saved. People think you lose your salvation. Exodus chapter 32, verse 31 to 32. Then Moses returned to Yahuwah and said, "Oh, these people have committed a great sin and have made for themselves a god of gold." Okay, idolatry. This is what Moses says. Moses was like a lawyer petitioning for Israel, stepping in for them. Check this. He goes to, I don't know if I would have ever said this for a rebellious congregation or assembly. Verse 32, he says, "Yet now, Father, if you will forgive their sin, but if not, I pray, blot me out of your book, which you have written." He said, "Take me out of the book." And in case you guys are not wondering, it's the book of life. Obviously, this is the book of the record of those who are God's children, those who are righteous. And Moses is going to the point of saying, "Take me out of the book." Moses wouldn't ask God to take him out of the book if he didn't think it was possible. What kind of question would that be, or request would that be? If he's requesting something that's not possible, what is that? What kind of request would you call that? Help me out. There's a word I'm looking for.
I don't know what word you're looking for, but it's definitely self-sacrifice for his people. No different than what Yahuwah did, through Yahusha.
I'm kind of thinking along the lines of, is it a rhetorical question? Is it rhetorical? No. A rhetorical request? Nah, that doesn't fit.
Hypothetical? I don't know.
Nah, it's not even hypothetical, right? Because it can't happen. If it's not possible, it's not even hypothetical. It's a ridiculous question. And Christians think this way. They think this way about God towards us and us towards God. They think about, like, when God says in the Old Testament, "Be holy as I am holy." In a Christian's mindset, they think that God was being sarcastic because he knows we can't be holy and nobody can ever attain to his level of holiness. So in their mind, they believe God was actually being sarcastic. And I think that's absolutely disrespectful. Like, his request was serious. It's mad disrespectful. He didn't show any words around his statements to allude to us, to give us the idea that he was joking or being sarcastic. When he said, I want you to be holy, he meant it. And he actually punished people that weren't pursuing holiness. So why would he punish people over a standard that wasn't a legit standard? Doesn't make any sense. Anyway, Moses is asking a question. He's making a request to something that he knows is absolutely possible, which is that just as you put me in the book of life, you have the power to take me out of it. And I'm asking you to take my name out of it if you don't forgive them. All right. So let's talk more about this book of life concept. Book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 5. It says, he who overcomes shall be clothed with white garments, and I will not blot out his name from the book of life, but I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. What is important here? Key words, he who overcomes. There's an overcoming that is necessary. We must overcome. That there's effort on our part to overcome. Yahuwah doesn't overcome for us. He did the work. He died. He resurrected from the dead. He died for us. He shed his blood. He provided an opportunity for us for our sins to be washed away. It is our responsibility to continue to remain in him and chase after him, to stay in his love, to stay in his grace. Revelation chapter 20, verse 15. It says, and anyone not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. So just as your name could be on the list, the book of life, your name can also be off the list. John chapter 15, verse 5 to 6. It says, I am the vine. Yahusha says, I am the vine. You are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit. For without me, you can do nothing. You see, you have to stay connected. If anyone does not abide, the word abide here, I put it down below. The word abide in the above passage means to remain or to stay. We have to stay or to remain in belief in the Messiah. And not just remain in the belief of Messiah, but we are actually to remain in intimacy with him, seeking his heart, seeking his word out. What pleases him? What does he hate? And conforming our life to those standards. In verse 6, it says, if anyone does not abide in me, if anyone does not stay in me, remain in me, he is cast out as a branch and is withered, and they gather them and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. I don't know how people believe in this doctrine of once saved, always saved with words like this. A branch is cut off of the tree. We are cut off from them. He just said here, I am the vine. He literally made himself, metaphorically, the vine that branches are attached to, and it can be cut off. These branches can be cut off. I think that's easy to understand. Ezzy. Oh, I saw your hand. Romans. So I wanted to connect this with, obviously, a lot of you know where I'm going with this. Romans 11 with the branches, the olive tree. Okay. Romans chapter 11, according to Jeremiah, I'm going to say, I forget. I think it's chapter 3 where Yahuwah calls Israel a green olive tree. But Romans 11 touches on this topic. And I'm going to start at verse 19. It says, you will say then, branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. Talking about Gentiles being grafted into Israel. Okay, so in the tree of Israel, you have natural branches that have always been part of that tree, and those are natural Israelites. All right, Jeremiah chapter 11, verse 16 is the reference for the green olive, Israel being the green olive tree. Jeremiah 11:16. All right, so here he says, branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. So some branches were taken off the tree so that Gentiles, non-Israelites, can be grafted into the Israelite tree. Okay? Immigrants becoming migrants and having now citizenship in the kingdom of Israel. Verse 20, well said. All right, well said. Good. I'm glad you understand that some branches were broken off that you might be grafted in. Because of unbelief, they, the natural branches, Israelites, were broken off. There's your proof right there. Once saved, always saved doesn't exist in God's eyes. And you stand by faith. Do not be haughty, but fear. For if God did not spare the natural branches, he may not spare you either. Look at that. Paul is even saying you aren't guaranteed a seat. If he didn't guarantee the seat to natural Israelites, bloodline, DNA, genetic Israelites, what makes you think he's going to guarantee a seat to you who's not blood? He says, therefore, consider the goodness and severity of God on those who fell, severity, but towards you, goodness. If is the key word here, if you continue in his goodness, you have to continue in his goodness. You can't run away from his goodness and expect to keep your seat in the kingdom. It just doesn't make sense. You have to stay committed. Otherwise, you also will be cut off. There it is again. There's so much language in here that dismantles this once saved, always saved doctrine. Verse 23, and they also, if they do not continue in unbelief. So just like you can be cut off and fall away from the faith, you can come back. As long as you don't commit the unpardonable sin, blaspheming against the Spirit, saying that the Spirit is fake and, whatever, blasphemous after you've been either healed by the Spirit's work and power, a miraculous healing happened to you, a demon was cast out, whatever the case might be. You've actually tasted this level of power from the Spirit, and then you walk around and say, oh, that stuff is fake. The Spirit is fake. I don't think you can be redeemed from that state of mind. It says here, if you continue in unbelief, and it says, otherwise you also will be cut off. Verse 23, and they also, if they do not continue in unbelief, will be grafted in. For God is able to graft them in again. So there's even redemption is possible. You could lose your salvation and get your salvation back. Lose your salvation, get your salvation back. Verse 24, if you were cut out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature into a cultivated olive tree, how much more will these who are natural branches be grafted into their own olive tree again? Okay, so if a wild non-Israelite Gentile can be grafted into Israel, then the natural Israelites who were cut off can also be grafted back in again. They're very important in God's eyes, more important. And that's just the truth from scripture. D-Rel.